red spot, so you should have bottle number 6 for red spot. And again, another resurrection. So
yeah. So it was similar to Yellow Spot, which we brought back in maybe 2012. We turned our attention to Red Spot quickly afterwards. And this again is a whiskey that would have disappeared probably in the 50s, 60s. We started working again with the Mitchells, looking up recipe books. And again, the idea here was not to, try to recreate Red Spot as it was, because, that would be very, very difficult to do. So we reimagined it. What would it be like? What casks were used potentially? And I suppose we identified Marsala casks. So there was no doubt that Marsala was used at the time. The Mitchells were importing quite an amount of Marsala wine casks. And we had Marsala maturing in Midleton for probably over 15, 20 years. So we worked with the Mitchells, starting putting together prototypes. And there, maybe 2-3 years ago, we brought back Red Spot. And effectively what it is, again, you have a similar distillate style, which is a medium style single pot still whiskey made from a mixture of barley and malted barley, triple distilled in copper pot stills, and then matured in 3 types of casks. So you have the American oak, you have the Oloroso sherry, and then you have this wonderful contribution of Marsala casks from the island of Sicily.
And Marsala as a style of wine isn't one that I'd be overly familiar with, so what would we expect from?
I've been to Sicily a few times on sourcing these casks. A beautiful island. And Marsala, I think the Marsala wine itself was kind of discovered around the 1700s. There was a guy called John Woodhouse, I think was his name. He came from London. He went to Sicily and he discovered their way of producing these sweet wines. And that was really the start of Marsala wines. And then a guy called Vincenzo Florio, he purchased a lot of the land and the vineyards in Marsala. And he set up his winery, Florio Winery, in 1833. And actually, that's the winery that we use to season our casks. So what we do is we send our empty casks. We get them made with Antonio Paez. He sends the empty virgin cask down to Marsala, and then Florio, he fills them with Marsala wine, which is a sweet fortified wine, for about 2 years, and then they're emptied, and then they're sent back to Midleton, and then we fill them with our whiskey. So that's the route really for Marsala. And I suppose Marsala wine itself is very distinctive in that it is lovely, it's sweet, it's a fortified wine, but it has lovely sort of baked apple, cooked fruit, sweetness, caramel, toffee. And I think once we nose this Red Spot here now, you'll see it coming through on the nose.
I definitely know that you've said it, that baked apple. Like I get this, it's like more spice maybe as well in there. Yeah,
there's probably a hint of maybe little cinnamon, there's a little bit of, but I think first of all, you get the baked apple, the baked fruit, there's a bit of toffee and coffee, a little bit of fudge. But then you have those spices coming through as well, and just probably a hint of dried fruit, I would say.
Yeah. I definitely just get like that toffee penny character, you know.
Yeah. You get some figs, you get some raisins. And an interesting part, Joe, of the whole Marsala process is what they call costomoto, where they take some of the grape must and they actually boil it. They make it into almost like a syrup. All right, it's really, really sweet, and they add some of that back into the wine again to give it the sweetness and this kind of caramelized sweetness, and that's kind of called costomoto, which is a distinctive part of the Marsala winemaking process, which is interesting.
It's interesting as well. Like when we think of these types of wine, you think of Marsala and Malaga and Pedro Jimenez. They all have such different processes. It's not just like this is called Malaga because it's from Malaga. It's a completely unique.
The grapes used here are they've a few different types of grape that they use, but the ones that Florio used, the Grillo and Catarato grapes, which is they're distinctive.
Two grapes I've never heard of.
Yeah, well they're used in Marsala winemaking, which is very, very distinctive as well.
Yeah.
They're very traditional wines from these areas, so they all have developed their
probably been making them this way for
100 years.
Yeah. So we have a taste.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think?
It's big, this one, in texture. I don't get the baked apple initially, but it's kind of coming through
True, yeah.
a little bit later. Like I get like maybe like a cooking apple or a russet apple, and not quite as sweet, but there is still that lovely sweetness there as well. But just a bit more amplified, I think, than the yellow spot in terms of mouthfeel and texture.
I think on the nose as well, when you go back to it, I get a little touch of maybe leather, maybe sort of kind of leather, kind of there's a nice leather note off it. And the spices start coming through.
Yeah,
the figs, the nutmeg, a little bit of nutmeg and cinnamon.
Some kind of maybe white pepper.
I would say as well, if you can compare these, go back and compare the nose through them, you'll really highlight the differences between them.
It's such a great tasting practice to be able to compare all the individual ones.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, because you're going to see it really showcases, I suppose, what this series is all about, which is about different seasoned cask finishing and the differences and little nuances that can play on all the different types of spots.
It's a bit of a journey as well, because I've just realised we're kind of going in chronological order of releases. We're going to the green, we're going to the yellow, we're doing the red, and we're going to finish on the blue. So it's kind of taking us on a journey where this brand, this whiskey family, and the Mitchells and Midleton have come from. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We'd just a wee comment there. So,
all right.
Is the red spot and blue spot core range somebody having some difficulty to get? Yes, they are. Now I suppose it's just produced in
limited volumes. Yeah.
I mean, because of the nature of the Marsala cast and the Madeira cast and all these fortified wine casts, they're quite scarce.
Yeah.
And availability, so that's why it's quite limited in terms of its volume,
And even with the work, the work that we do with these bodegas and wineries, we are limited in terms of how many casks we can give them. So eventually, a lot of these spots are going to plateau to a point. Unfortunately,
it's just the nature of things.
It's just the nature of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think also that and the fact that Irish whiskey at the moment is just going through this incredible revival, that there is just so much demand for these expressions. And I know, like, sure, yourself, as soon as somebody hears about a new release coming, there's already people planning on buying it.
Absolutely.
The interest is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic for Irish whiskey as a category,
It is, yeah. I mean, it's even for the likes of this festival to exist, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I've only been working in the industry directly for 5 years, but even since I started, just seeing the interest grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
So, while it's frustrating when you can't get things, it is the sign of a growing industry. So, please do keep buying Irish whiskey.
Sign of a good product.
Yeah.